fashion. Clothes were initially invented during the Ice Age, when one bright spark theorised that instead of throwing animal skins away because you couldn't eat them, you could wrap yourself up in them and not be so bloody freezing. From that moment on, fashion was invented. Certain skins became de rigueur, and anyone seen wearing last season's mammoth hide was humiliated with taunts and left out on the ice to perish until they got stylish or dead, whichever came first. Hemlines rose and fell with the seasons, and accessories such as bones and the ears of enemies became the in thing. Leather remained the fabric of choice for about 40,000 years, until a very confused person came up with the concept of weaving, and the fashion garment industry really took off. Via a judicious study of worms' bottoms, silk was discovered in the Far East, and suddenly women around the globe knew exactly what they wanted for their birthdays. Thus haute couture was born, and from Peking to Timbuktu, men became poor overnight. The concept of power dressing was instigated in Japan by the samurai, whose finely crafted garb invariably included a 3-foot razor-sharp head remover. I mean, that's power in anyone's language. Throughout the Orient, style and quality reigned. Status was defined by the intricately woven garments worn by the rich and powerful. In Rome and Athens, flowing togas and ornate armour were very much the thing. In Britain, guys painted themselves blue and shouted a lot, thus preempting Chelsea supporters by a couple of millennia. Towards the end of the 20th century, female fashion was largely defined by skirt length. By the year 2000, skirts had become so short that they were worn round the neck like chokers and offered little or no protection against the elements. But men were very happy, except during the period when fashion required them to wear paisley nappies. Sadly, whichever way they looked at this garment, they failed to convince themselves that they looked good. But at least they were fashionable, and at the end of the day, that's all that mattered. Possibly the greatest fashion breakthrough occurred in 2198 with the invention of soft clothes, computer-generated clothes that projected around the body from a digital necklace. Thermal insulation was provided by a variable kinetic force field that agitated air molecules adjacent to the body to provide heat. The opacity of the virtual garment could be controlled by a small handheld unit, and much fun was had by teenagers who managed to hack the code for a girl's garment and render it transparent while she was bending over. Girls had equal fun by making guys' clothing transparent while they were looking at the girl bending over, and many a beau was seen scurrying for the shadows with his tail between his legs. For 6 months in 2210, fashion dictated that clothes should be abandoned altogether in favour of a genetically induced hairy fleece that could be grown to order around the body. This fashion died out quite rapidly when everyone realised that it looked completely gross, although it retained a certain popularity in Greece and Italy, where no one noticed the difference. Historical footnote. The only recorded instance of a major conflict caused by differing views on fashion were the tie wars of the 22nd century. The workers of the world rebelled against the tie-wearing classes, and a bloody conflict ensued. The blue-collar, blisters, and the management, ties, fought tooth and nail until the ties introduced a devastating weapon. The smart but casual bomb, which would shower the enemy with paisley cravats and hand-tailored lounge suits. The blisters were about to admit defeat when they suddenly realised that it was they who were manufacturing all the weapons for the ties, so they stopped. This proved the most decisive strike of the war, and the whole thing ended in compromise. The blisters agreed to do up the top button of the shirts as a concession towards smartness, while the ties retained their ties, but wore them with the top buttons undone, as a gesture of solidarity with the workers. Religion. Since the dawn of time, man has had a need to worship a higher power. The sun was an early favourite, as were trees, and the odd big-mouthed git who managed to get together a few followers by advocating virgin sacrifices, naked orgies, and other prehistoric crowd-pleasers. At this point, I must confess that I'm probably not qualified to provide an in-depth comparative analysis of world religions, mainly because I don't know smeg about them. However, I know a lot about smeg. So here is my summary of the world's religions in terms of smeg. Taoism. Smeg happens. Hare Krishna. Smeg happens, Rama Rama Ding Dong. Zen. What is the sound of smeg clapping? Islam. If smeg happens, take a hostage. Buddhism. When smeg happens, is it really smeg? Judaism. Why does smeg always happen to me? Protestantism. Smeg won't happen if I work harder. Catholicism. If smeg happens, I deserve it. Hinduism. This smeg has happened before. Jehovah's Witnesses. Knock knock, smeg happens. Baptists. If you go right under, all that smeg will wash off. Unitarian. What's all this smeg about? Seventh-day Adventist. Smeg happens on Saturdays. Confucianism. Confucius. He says smeg happens. Mormon. Smeg happens over and over again. Scientology. The machine says you're full of smeg. New Age. Smeg comes in spaceships. Let us surround this smeg in white light and heal it. Rosicrucians. There's a lot of secret smeg you know nothing about. Rastafarianism. Hey man, let's smoke some of this smeg. Well, there you have it. If there are any present-day religions I have failed to include, I'm sorry, I'm not infallible. Also, if I have offended anyone, please forgive me, for I know not what I do. As with anything in the sphere of human development, religions are constantly evolving and changing. However, all the world's religions were forced to have a bit of a rethink when God turned up in New York on December the 25th, 2235, and announced his displeasure at the fact that no one had even sent him a card, let alone bought him a present. Then, when he saw the state his creation was in, he totally lost it and went off in a divine huff, saying he never wanted to speak to us again. And to be fair, you can't really blame him. Music. Early music relied heavily on percussion, usually produced by the impact of a club on someone's skull. This was later refined to the art of banging two rocks together while shouting. Thus, were rock music and bad jokes born. Wind instruments had their genesis when a particularly inventive Cro-Magnon blew into a bone and a whole load of slimy shit flew out with a sort of farting sound. Hey presto! Modern jazz was created. Throughout the world, witch doctors and shaman discovered the benefit of shouting in tune and decided to call it singing. Someone made a list of different sounding shoutings and called them notes. This eventually led to people like Mozart using loads of them in quick succession to create symphonies and royalties. The art of music became more and more refined over the centuries until it finally reached its pinnacle when Mike Batt recorded Remember You're a Womble. Music is largely defined by the instruments of a given era. During the 21st century, classical instruments such as the violin and trombone lapsed in popularity, largely because they were so bloody hard to play. Synthesizers, controlled by AI computers, came to the fore. These instruments could play any sound imaginable, as well as writing songs and lyrics and singing along to them. All the musician had to do was turn them on, and a number of virtuoso performers gained prominence due to their deafness with the on switch. One of the most stunning events in musical history occurred in 2167, when one of the artificial intelligence synthesizers, totally independently, came up with a perfect version of Remember You're a Womble to universal acclaim. Fun things to do in your car. Paint the words "Help Me" in blood red paint with your hand on the back window of your car and see how far you can drive without being stopped by the police. Or drive around and put every stray cat you see on the back seat of your car. After about 5, things should get interesting. Or stop and pray to roadkill. Or forget to wind down the window during a drive-by shooting. Or connect your brake lights to your horn so that every time you brake, you hoot the car in front. Or enter a stock car race and insist on towing a caravan round the track. For added fun, your bank manager should be in the caravan. Or employ a life-size model of Tyrannosaurus Rex as a hood ornament. Or fill your car with helium, stop regularly and ask directions. Or play a tape of a human heartbeat very loudly when you stop at the traffic lights. Stare at the driver next to you with a manic, wide-eyed expression. Or put a bumper sticker with tiny writing on the back of your car so that people keep crashing into you as they try to read it. The bumper sticker should read, "Please keep your distance." Or another jolly bumper sticker is keep honking, I'm reloading. It is only available at Jehovah's Witnesses' Kingdom Halls. Or test your driving skills by trying to parallel park in a small space between two Ferraris with your eyes closed. And lastly, if you get stopped by a police officer, keep looking at your watch. Then say, how long is this going to take? Because your missus is expecting me. Weapons. Teeth were probably the first effective weapon ever used by man. But anyone suggesting the tongue was the first effective weapon ever used by woman is far braver than me. Other body parts were no doubt utilised as we became more sophisticated. For example, the index finger could be used to inflict ridicule on an enemy by pointing it at his big hairy enemy feet and going The concept of the bow and arrow appeared very early on in man's history, albeit with limited success. It took the invention of string to convert it into the deadly weapon it was to become. Far later, the neutron bomb was hailed as a tactical innovation in that it was able to kill everyone within a mile radius, whilst leaving all the buildings undamaged. It was presumably designed by a fan of architecture with no mates. Weapon design reached its nadir with the proton cannon of Nakasami, the most powerful weapon ever developed. The prototype was mounted on an early starship and tested at the outer reaches of the solar system, coincidentally, according to government sources, on the same day that Pluto disappeared. Unfortunately, the recoil from the weapon was so great that it propelled the starship back through the solar system, where it became embedded in Titan, a moon of Jupiter. It developed into a popular tourist attraction and was the first weapon in history to recoup its development costs through tourism. Female erogenous zones. Female erogenous zones weren't discovered, at least not by men, until 1240, when guys immediately invented the chastity belt out of jealousy. During the 20th century, a magazine called Cosmopolitan got bored with the clitoris and sent out an expedition to find something more exciting. The expedition returned with news of a fabulous new erogenous zone called the G-spot, which was incredibly hard to find, but apparently well worth the effort, especially if you were the person it was on. In the year 2354, whilst trying to scratch a particularly elusive itch, a Miss Sky bottle from Titan discovered the Z-spot. This tiny but highly sensitive area is supposed to be the source of the ultimate fountain of female ecstasy, according to the renamed Cosmopolitan. However, it is situated so far up the vagina that you have to dislodge a kidney to get at it, and even if you do find it, no one's yet worked out what to do with it.